It should be, I'm thinking, a good balance this year. I'm hoping that it does.
Hopefully,
Yes.
It certainly looks like good soil.
It does. And it was just really, I mean, it was beautiful last year after he got it tilled and everything. You know, you remember that first year that we had that compost that was brought out? It was so rich and beautiful.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
that was great.
Yes.
That was great.
And that was the horse manure at that time.
Yeah.
And so we got a certain weed that was in the seeds of the manure. And so we got pretty much all of that out now. I haven't seen much of that in the last couple of years because we stayed right on it. The kids that came in to help me, they did an excellent job of helping me weed. So we'll have that group that
That's
help us.
wonderful.
Yes.
It's so wonderful to have the church groups come and help because those helpers are just phenomenal.
That's right, there's many hands at work, you know. If we had to do it all by ourselves, it would just really break you down. But they come and they work with us each year, and that's such a great help. And they'll be right at the location where your garden is this year, so you'll have a lot of weeding kept up real good.
That will be wonderful.
Yes. Also, I noticed that your garden, where you put the bunny grass, the little short grasses, and the roses, they seem to be doing beautifully this year.
Yeah, those are knockout roses.
Okay.
And knockout roses are very easy to grow. They tend to be disease-free and they tend to bloom very prolifically. And a lot of roses only bloom like twice a season, but knockout roses. Yeah, these bloom pretty much all season long, and they tend to resist black spot, which is the bane of roses.
Yeah.
Most roses will get black spot, and
On
you
the
have
leaves.
you have to spray against it, and you need to spray continuously.
And aphids too are bad on roses too, aren't they?
Yeah, well, for whatever reason, they have bred these knockout roses to be very disease resistant and to bloom continuously. So if you're thinking about planting a rose,
That's the best one.
almost every single store sells knockout roses.
Yes.
And they are a really good rose to plant, and those are the kind I planted in the herb garden because I knew that they would be pretty carefree and they would bloom pretty continuously. So I'm hoping that they look nice.
They do, they really do look nice. I wanted to sort of, for the interest of the listeners, I want to mention to them that the early spring bulb plantings like the tulips, hyacinths, crocuses and all, they usually plant them in the fall of the year.
Mhm.
And they go through that cold snap and they bloom out in the early spring. So the best time to plant them is November, October.
October. Yeah, because you want them to get a little bit established before the ground freezes.
Freezes.
November is a little too late.
Okay.
The bulbs usually are in the stores in September, so you can start planting them in September and October.
Okay.
I would not wait until November. You can start in September and October. That way they put out a little bit of root growth before the winter starts. And then when spring comes, they'll just be popping out of the ground.
Yeah. Well, those I've noticed that they have just a slight little warm up. I see those little, the little crocuses. They pop up all through my lawn. I said, my goodness, they're trying to let me know that it's a warm up. So as I walk out the back door, there they are, all nice and purple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe I'll have to bring over some one of my favorite early spring bulbs are called snowdrops.
Oh,
And they're not very common in the United States, but this was something that was very common in England. And they're very, very early. They're one of the very first bulbs to bloom, and they're white
no.
with a little green tinge to them. And they're called snowdrops because they tend to come up through the snow. And they bloom
Just beautiful.
very well. They're just very delicate. They have little nodding heads, and they bloom January, February. I miss them every year because we're in Florida,
Oh.
and every year they bloom before we get home. So,
Well, now, do you know of the one they call Dutchman's Britches?
oh yes,
Now
oh yes.
that comes in early springs, and you find it in a more of a low valley-like area. When I was going to Andrews University, they had a little valley area where the Dutchman Britches, it's almost like snowdrops on the hillside that you would see them. And when you get up close to them and look at them, they got that little split. You know how the little Dutchmans used to wear the little short breeches? And I can see how they would call it the Dutchman's breeches.
Yeah, that's cute. That's but that's almost a Michigan wildflower.
Yeah.
But I think you can maybe buy those in a nursery.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure, but that is something that you often see growing in the woods.
Okay.
It's more of a shade. It's something that needs shade to grow.
Yes.
And it naturalizes really well. If you plant some, it will spread quite readily if you have the right conditions for it. But it likes moist, shaded ground.
Okay. Well, you know, it's just amazing. The first thing that I noticed in Michigan that really blooms out is the forsythia. And once that starts, you see after a while the tulips and the daffodils, and then sometimes you'll see one of my favorite, the Siberian iris. My favorite one is the smallest, a little tighter petals. The Siberian iris.
Yeah.
That's the one I like with the little yellow stripe in it. And that's my most favorite. I got one on the corner there from the house, and those little circle beds that we did. So I got the Siberian iris, and then what they call a bearded something iris.
Yeah, the bearded iris, sometimes
Yes.
they're called German iris.
Yes. So I have some of those that they give a little variety. And I've got to go and weed it out and clean them out and get them ready for this year. Maybe add some annuals in it once those die off. Caller, you on the line. Caller, you're on the line. You can call back. Yes, so this is some of the beautiful things that we have to look forward in spring, that everything, and also the, what is the other one that dies back so hard and it's mostly foliage and sometimes a little blossom, it's called it's a border plant. Very common. I got some in my yard. I can't call the name right quick. You know, sometimes you can call them off just like this, but hosta.
Oh, hosta.
Yeah, it come to me now. The hosta. Now that is a beautiful plant to me. It's really nice for a border, but they can multiply like everything. So anyone that's growing the hosta, they can take them and just take a shovel and chop them into fourths and plant them, and they just multiply and get larger and larger.
Yes, and they're very, very sturdy.
Yes.
Almost impossible
To kill them, it is.
Yeah,
That's right.
they're a very sturdy plant. They do like partial shade to partial shade. They don't do so well in full sun. They will survive in full sun if you keep them well watered, but they prefer partial shade. But they're incredibly sturdy, and they're beautiful.
Mine did pretty well, although the sun hits it, not direct. I think the sun comes from the east, and my house is facing, it's on the front, and I'm not sure, but they
Yeah, they'll take east sun, because the east sun tends to be cool.
yeah,
South or west sun is hotter,
yeah.
and that would, and they'll even tolerate that as long as they're well watered.
But with me having that mulch down that sort of retains moisture, it probably keeps them where they're not, don't dry, do a hard dry.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Susan, it's been wonderful. We managed to tear up this hour talking about things that we want to grow. One of the things too this year we'd like to impress upon the community, and that we're going to have a Juneteenth parade, and we're hoping that this residents there on Broadway will think in terms on the 15th of June that we'll be coming down with the parade, and if they would just clean up their areas real nice and clean so we can be proud of the parade coming down into the center of our neighborhood. Broadway is always a main street.
Can you say that one more time?
The parade will be the 15th of June. It'll start at 1 o'clock, and it will start from
The cleanup. The cleanup part.
Oh, yes, we want to. Yes, we want to make sure that we clean up our areas. Now's the time that we started. If we start now getting up the winter debris, it won't be so hard to keep it up. And just every once in a while, just go out and sweep out curbside, rake off the tree lawn, and keep it cut nice and neat. You'll feel so much prouder even coming to your home. And it just makes me feel good when I drive down and you can see where everyone is, the next door neighbor and all the neighbors are just mimicking each other by keeping their areas nice, neat, and clean. We can do it. We've been brought up at the old school to keep things clean. We used to have to wash by hand on the washboard and things like that. Now you can just use some spot remover and throw them into a washer and then into a dryer. You got it all done when it comes to keeping things clean. And when it comes to outside, get your shovel and rake things off, and get the shovel and scoop it up and put it into containers and set it out for the trash. They are picking up trash, yard waste now. So we can put it into little bags and set it out there for them to pick it up now. Let's just make a great impression this year and put our best foot forward. And thank you so much for listening in to Getting a Fresh Start with Emma Kennard. I'm your host for this hour, and tune in on next week at the same time, but also on Mondays when we will be talking about current events and keeping it real. Thank you for listening in. Have a blessed week.